when I was in a tough training session, I always try to make things easier for myself, so focus, instead of focusing on the pain, focus on the form.
That Triathlon Show, episode 92. Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. I'm your host Michael, and on today's episode I interview double Olympian Kate Roberts, who these days has turned to coaching in her home country of South Africa. We get into a lot of interesting and relevant topics for age group triathletes, including time management and prioritization, things that Kate's learned from working with world-class coaches throughout her career, like focusing on the execution and training smarter, not necessarily training more. Mental skills and goal setting, which is among Kate's specialties as a coach, and some other important and guiding triathlon training philosophy. Plus, you get some example training sessions that Kate tends to give her age group athletes that are just like you, probably time crunched and need to get a lot of bang for their training time investment. So Kate participated in both the Beijing and the London Olympics. She has a silver medal from the Glasgow Commonwealth Games in 2014, and at her peak she was ranked 7th in the world. But before we dive into the interview with Kate, this episode is presented by Precision Hydration that you can find on precisionhydration.com. You can use the discount code THATTRIATHLONSHOW, all one word, for 15% off any of their electrolyte products. They recently published an article on their blog called 4 Things We Learned from Getting Our Sweat Test Data Published in an Academic Journal. And last episode I talked about the first 2 points, but points 3 and 4 I will talk about today. And they are the number 3, that the athletes tested in North America, that was baseball, basketball, and American football players, had higher than average sweat sodium losses compared to the UK, and specifically the soccer or football and rugby players in the UK. So that's not so relevant for triathletes, perhaps, unless we can conclude that there's more salt in the North American diet. I don't really know, but this final point, point number 4, is very important, and that was that there was a strong correlation between how much sodium the athletes thought that they lose in their sweat and their actual sweat sodium concentration. And this is one of the founding pillars of the free online sweat test that you can take on precisionhydration.com that I'll link to in the show notes, and you can find the link to the blog article as well. This episode is also sponsored by Ventum. The Ventum One is a true superbike with no down tube and no seat stays, which makes it more aerodynamic than a traditional bicycles, and you can read all about their impressive wind tunnel test results on ventumracing.com, where the Ventum One, among other competitors, beat the Cervelo that was tested and had an aerodynamic performance that was better with 24% less drag than the closest competitor. So, if you want to get a new triathlon bike for the 2018 season, look no further than ventumracing.com. Alright, so now let's dive right into the interview with Kate Roberts. Alright, so today I'm very happy to welcome Kate Roberts to That Triathlon Show. How are you today, Kate, on this New Year's Day?
Very well, thank you. And you?
Yeah, I'm really good. My voice is a bit cracked because I went to a dinner party where the sound level was higher than high yesterday, so you had to really shout to make yourself heard. So my voice isn't at its podcasting peak probably for this episode, but let's hope I'll bring it on you to bring the good stuff for this episode and try to stay silent and mostly ask questions, if that's okay. So you're, for the listeners that don't know about you, you are a former professional triathlete from South Africa, and you've been to the Olympics twice. And but now you're no longer racing competitively, and you are actually coaching for since quite some time. How many years have you been coaching now?
Yes, I'm going into my 4th year of coaching. So yeah, so not very long, but so long enough to have picked up some experience along the way. And
Yeah, and I guess your athletic career also helped helped you pick up a thing or two here and there, to
yeah,
say the least. So why did you decide to, when you retired from professional triathlon, to get into coaching? Was it very natural, a logical consequence of just having been in the sport, or what was the thought process?
yeah, I think yeah. I mean, obviously, it was logical to move into coaching. I kind of got to the point in my career where I'd achieved everything I wanted to. I didn't feel there was anything left for me to achieve, and you know, I knew that I needed to, if I wanted to carry on, and my motivation needed to be higher, and I just kind of felt that I'd done everything I wanted to. So it was sort of the next progression was to get into coaching, and towards the end of my career, I'd kind of moved back to South Africa. I'd been away for many years and kind of saw an opportunity, to work with juniors and to transfer the skills that I'd used in my triathlon career into the juniors. So then it was quite a new, new goal for me, and and that's what I decided to do. And and then it was quite a big transition going from being a professional athlete into coaching. Um, and it came with its challenges, but yeah, so far so good, and I'm enjoying it, and still got lots to learn, but yeah, it's been a great journey so far.
What range of juniors do you coach? What age ranges and what ability ranges?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really, I focus on juniors. So that was when I started out. I sort of, encouraged any junior to come and join me and to try and identify talent, and then to try and sort of show them the skills that are really important, especially in draft legal racing. And then, as I progressed in my coaching, I did start helping a few age groupers here and there, but predominantly my focus has been on juniors, just because I have quite a big ambition to give back to the sport in South Africa, and I felt there was a desperate need for people to do that in South Africa. We had lots of age group coaches, we had lots of coaches that were helping, age groupers and even elite athletes, but there was no one really focusing on juniors, and that was something I felt that was really important if you wanted to develop them into the Richard Murrays and the Henry Skummans of this world. So that's kind of how I got into it, and yeah, it's been challenging, but at the same time very rewarding. And I hope to one day look back and say that I did make a difference. By coaching the juniors and giving back to the sport of triathlon.
Yeah, but it's good that you're also saying that you are coaching some age groupers, because that gives the listeners some perspective, and I guess that what it's like to be an age group triathlete, from, even if it's not your main focus, from that experience that you have with them, and we can try to bring out some tips for that segment of the audience, which is the almost everybody basically as well, and probably coaching juniors has helped you with age groupers and vice versa as well, just learning things from different demographics and applying it in different areas of your coaching.
Yes, most definitely. So yeah, I enjoy working with age groupers. They challenge me as well. And it's, as you say, time management's a big factor in their lives, and we need to manage time very effectively for them to get the best out of themselves. So yeah, I find it just as rewarding and challenging, and I enjoy it because they're mostly athletes that are very, they do lots in their lives, and they're very very hardworking, and it's really great to work with those type of athletes.
Yeah, let's get into that. That's a really good topic. What do you think, like, or expand upon your thoughts on like effective triathlon training, on when you are an age grouper and you have a crunched time budget for training?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult because, I mean, they have lots going on in their lives, and, and triathlon is just one aspect of it. But I always say the most important thing when you're coaching age groupers is to really make sure that you plan, your week ahead, your day ahead. I always say, I call it the 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. So it's very important for them to plan their days, because, I mean, they've got to go to work. Some of them have kids and families, and, really demanding jobs. So then they've got to juggle triathlon, and triathlon is normally an outlet for them, their own space and their own time to think and feel, outside of the craziness of their work and family life. So they love it. But the key aspect is to plan, and then obviously I also tell them that if they should miss a session, which often happens, is never to try and fit it in. Again, because that's when you run into problems. When they say they missed a swim session on the Monday, and then they try and fit it in on the Tuesday with a bike and a run session, and on the Wednesday they're really tired, and then they miss their Wednesday session. So I always say, if you're not able to get to a session, put it behind you, and then focus on the sessions that you have to do in following the week. So that's that's always an important aspect, because if they don't do that, then like I said, they run into problems. Often they get sick and injured, and then that breaks the consistency of their training, which is what they want. They want consistency in their training, in their weekly training, in their monthly training, and in the build up to a race.
Yeah, and I guess that causes you as an athlete to think that, hey, if I don't manage my time properly today, if I miss my training today, then I won't get to do this session at all. So it forces you to really be mindful of what you're doing with your time, and actually planning properly from the start, and not like being very casual about it, and maybe skipping a session that you wouldn't have needed to skip, and then just because you would have thought that you could fit it in later, but you're not allowed to do that. Your coach says no, so you're actually forced to plan from the start. You mentioned the planning your week ahead and planning your days ahead. Do you have any other tips that are like maybe less foundational, but that you still see that help your athletes be consistent in their training and get their training done?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a lot of the time in age groupers, they like to focus on the disciplines that they're really good at. So a lot of them enjoy cycling. So then they just want to go cycle all the time. So often I tell them, you also need to focus on the disciplines that aren't so nice, because that's where they can make some good gains. But at the same time, knowing where you spend most of the time in the race. So obviously, if they're doing sort of a 70.3 race, or even an Olympic distance race, where the time spent on the bike is the most time, that's where you kind of have to spend a lot of your time, more so than the swimming and the running. But it's difficult to balance it. You also need to balance it according to their strength and weakness. So like I said, if they're a very good cyclist, then you need to also focus on your weaknesses, where you can improve, which often they don't like. But I mean, I guess we all like that. We all like to do the things that we enjoy. But if you're a bad swimmer and you're really struggling with your swimming technique, it's really something that you can improve quickly, if you focus on the elements of drills and those kind of things, to improve the swimming, and to make the swimming in the race more enjoyable. Because if you because if you don't,
so sorry, go on.
No, I'm just saying, if you don't do it, then then you get to the race and you haven't done enough swimming, and then you just don't enjoy the race in the swimming leg. So it is important to be able to focus on the weaknesses.
Yeah. What about, so you mentioned there a bit about how to distribute the time between different disciplines depending on what your goal distance is. Do you have any other, like in terms of how to structure the workouts themselves, the training sessions, what they look like, or that you think are maybe different when it comes to coaching age groupers that are on a very limited time budget compared to what you would do if you were preparing for a race as a professional athlete in your past, at least, with a very big time budget, effective triathlon training simply?
Yeah, so for age groupers, unfortunately, a weekend is very critical. So they need to, most of them have weekends off, and that's where they need to spend their time training, is over a weekend. During the week, they're very limited with time due to work commitments. So it's important for them to focus on training lots over the weekend. So that's when you do your big miles of, your long bikes, your long runs, because you don't necessarily have the time in the week to do that. And then in the week, you normally focus on, your shorter, sharper sessions that don't take as much time. So some of them might only have an hour in the morning or an hour at lunchtime, and that's all they can fit in. Or sometimes they only have one session a day. So you've got to plan it around their schedule. So make sure that you you're getting, say for instance, you're getting your speed session of swimming, your distance session of swimming, and a technique session of swimming in a week. And then obviously you need a long bike somewhere, and that's normally over the weekend, and long run is normally over the weekend. But then sort of your speed sessions on the run and the bike, you can do that in the week when you have less time. So you need to structure it around that. And then obviously, like a training plan is always very, very important to structure around the athlete's needs. So you structure it according to, sometimes on a Wednesday, they might want to, they might have a serious work function and they can't do any training. So then you need to schedule in a rest down on possibly a Wednesday. So you have to sort of take the athlete's needs into consideration, and then obviously according to what distance they're training for. If they're training for 70.3, bike is a serious focus, and swimming less of a focus, because that's where you spend more time on the bike and less time on the swimming. So you just got to adapt it to the athlete's needs.
So what about the intensity and volume aspects of training? Do you see that that's different in terms of the distribution of volume and the importance of volume and intensity for age groupers compared to pro athletes?
Yes and no. Obviously, it depends on the level of the age grouper. If you can't give too many intense sessions, because then they take a lot out of the athlete. But you also can't give too little intense sessions, because that's where effectively how they improve is through intensity. It also depends on the, sort of on the time of the year, when they're training. If they're doing, if they've got a 2 or 3 week holiday period, then you put in some nice miles for them, so they can get that base foundation. But if they're going back to work, then you focus on, some skill development, and also some speed intensity work that won't be as time consuming, and they can get the most out of the session. But then like I said, the weekends are always long rides, runs off the bike, long runs. That's the time where you have the most time available normally, and that's where you can put in the good training sessions. So around my age groupers, I normally, like I said, in swimming, I normally like them to do one distance swim a week, one skill session a week.
What can you give very brief examples of what a distance swim and a skill swim and an interval or speed swim, might look like, just to give an idea for the listeners?
So in terms of distance swimming, they call it, you just sort of do maybe, you get in the water and sort of, depending, maybe 3 to 4K workout at the most, and then you just sort of, do your warm up and your cool down. But in the main set, you'll do something like 10 times 300 meters, with very limited rest, 15 seconds at the most. But it's not a hard session. It's just a, easy swim, easy 300 meters, where, you're not getting your heart rate up, but you're just getting the distance in. You can break it up between a snorkel or it's just a swim, maybe a pulling. So you say one swim, one pull, one snorkel, do that 3 times. And then do another swim at the end, so you can get 300s in, and then just very short rest in between, but nothing hard. Then your skill session, you obviously do lots of drills that work specifically for the athlete, where they need to improve on their swimming stroke. So then you don't worry about the times or what times you're swimming or anything like that. You just
How many drills do you like an athlete to have at most, or at least, like what's the range of drills that you think is appropriate in a session for any given athlete?
It just depends on the athlete. Like, I would say they normally focus on 3 to 4 drills that they need to work on. And then, you sort of do like a 50-meter drill, 50-meter swim, or 25-meter drill, 25-meter swim. There's obviously a whole lot of drills that they can work on. Another aspect is, band swimming. That teaches you to just swimming with a band. If they're very good, they can do that. Teaches you, to get over your stroke. Obviously, pool swimming and open water swimming is quite different. So you need them to make sure that they don't have the glide that they do in the pool. A lot of athletes tend to have the glide, whereas in open water swimming, it's not necessary to have the glide. So you need them to get over. They call it over the barrel or hugging someone. So you try and teach that technique to them, and band-only swimming helps a lot with that, or a band and a pool buoy. So there's a whole lot of techniques that they need to understand and focus on, and then and then obviously going back to the speed or the sort of threshold sessions, that's where you focus on sort of their critical swim speed. You obviously work that out, and then you do a session according to what they should be holding. So if they're holding 1 minute 30 per 100, you do like maybe 15 to 21 hundreds hold on 130, leaving off every 2 minutes. It's a tough session, but that's gonna give them that in the race, being able to hold this pace that they're wanting to hold for the specific distance.
Yeah, for the listeners, episode 27, that's on swimming training zones, or actually swimming threshold, critical swim speed, as Kate mentioned. So you can go and listen to that, and I will teach you about critical swim speed and how to use that. So what about some key lessons that you learned in your professional career that you apply in your coaching today? Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're a triathlete, you have to be very dedicated and committed, to your training. And it's the same thing for my coaching. I've got to be dedicated and committed to my athletes. So that, there's obviously a lot of transferable skills from being a triathlete on a professional level, and then taking those over to my coaching. There's a whole lot of things that I learned when I was a triathlete, that the more you communicated with your coach, the better off, you were going to be, they were going to understand you better. So I always try and tell my athletes that, the more they communicate with me, the better I know that they're doing the sessions and they're understanding the sessions. So communication is key between an athlete and a coach. And then obviously I learned one of the big things I learned is to, as an athlete, I always made sure that I had goals in mind. And as a coach, I also have goals in mind. And I teach my athletes, to goal setting is important, and they need to be able to write those goals down, because then they're accountable for them. So that was important for me as an athlete, and that's why I was a very goal orientated person. And sometimes you reach those goals, sometimes you didn't. Then you always knew what you were working towards, which is important for an athlete and also for a coach.
Yeah, let's do a quick sidetrack on that, because that's something that I found in my background research on you that is one of your specialties, the mental skills. And let's do something other than goal setting, because we actually talked about goal setting before on this podcast. But what's one thing within the realm of mental skills that you think most listeners, most age group triathletes would find useful, that you can teach us?
It was obviously, goal setting is a very important aspect, but then, the day in, day out of training is not always pretty. The days where you're really tired and you don't want to do it, and the other better things to do. But if you have that goal in mind, then you understand, what you're working towards. So some days my athletes are motivated, other days they're really not motivated. And as a coach, you need them to understand that, that's part of the course. Some days we really struggle to get out of bed and it's really difficult. But if you have that goal in mind and know what you're working towards, then it does make it easier and does make it worthwhile getting out of bed in the morning. Because like I said, when you're training day in, day out, it's not always pretty. And you can be really exhausted and tired. But if you have that goal in mind, then it makes it worthwhile. And when you reach that goal, it really does make it worthwhile, because then all that effort has been worth it.
Do you have something that you used in your career to get through a tough training session, for example, some thinking process or positive self-talk or something?
Yeah, obviously, I always, when I was in a tough training session, I always try to make things easier for myself, so instead of focusing on the pain, focus on the form, what am I doing? Am I, when I'm swimming hard, am I doing the entry right? Or, am I engaging the core when I run? Am I getting my cadence up? So those are little cues that you can think of instead of thinking of the pain. Am I leaning forward when I run? Am I getting on the bike? Am I in the right position? Am I comfortable on the bike? Am I getting my cadence up? Is my power where it needs to be? Focusing on those things instead of the pain really did help me in terms of, and also another thing was important was not focusing on the outcome, but focusing on the process. So, we used to call it ticking the boxes. So I'm currently going to start the race, and what do I need to do to have a good start? I need to stand next to good people to help me get out of the mess, and then do I need to get on some good feet? So you're always thinking on the process, and then when you get out of the swim, focusing on the form during the swim, getting out, having a good transition. Those are ticking the boxes. And I always say to my athletes, if you've ticked 85 to 95% of the boxes, and then regardless of the outcome, we had a good race. So you're not focusing specifically on the outcome. You're focusing on that process of doing well in the race. And then if you ticked 85 to 95% of the goals, no matter where you came in the race, you can be happy. And then we work towards the next race. So those are kind of mental aspects that I teach my athletes.
Yeah, I think especially for very driven athletes, that last thing is super important, because otherwise, if you have a tough goal and you have maybe a subpar swim, then you are going to have a really hard time to achieve that outcome goal. But if you have those process goals instead of outcome goals, then you will still be able to have a really good race, although you might just fail to reach that outcome goal, but you can still have a really good race because you had an excellent bike and an excellent run, because you just forgot about the poor swim and got on with it and kept ticking those boxes. So I think that especially for those driven athletes, that's an absolute key to good performance in races. One thing that I wanted to talk about is you were coached by Darren Smith, who is a very good and renowned Australian triathlon coach. Is there anything special that you learned from him that could be useful for us to learn?
Yeah, and there was lots of things that Darren taught me. Obviously, one of the biggest things was, it's not about how much we train, it's about how smart we train. Are we getting the most out of our sessions? Are we recovering from our sessions? Do we have the right technique when we do the sessions? Those are little things that I never realized were important. But Darren taught me that, it's, if you've got a bad technique in swimming, you need to sort it out, because you're going to reach a point where no matter how much you swim, you're not going to improve unless you sort out your technique. So those are things that I learned, and it's not the easy way. As an athlete, to understand that, because you just want to train and you always think the more you train, the better you're going to get. But there comes a point where the more you train, you're not going to be able to improve unless you have excellent technique. So those are things that he really, made sure that we understood, because he knew that to get that extra percentage or a few percent, it was all about making sure you had really good technique.
Yeah. Do you have any other really foundational principles that you find yourself keeping reminding your athletes of time and time again, the general training principles or life principles even?
Yeah, I always try and teach them, consistency is what it's going to make us better. So, so making sure that we do the training day in, day out, whether it's nice or not nice, making sure we listen to our bodies. So, if we feel that we're getting sick, then we need to take it back a notch. So it's not all about doing everything hard all the time. If you feel that you're on the edge and you need take a day easy, then you need to listen to your body, which is very difficult for some of us, because we want to do so well, and we think the more we train, the better we're going to do. But it's really important to make sure that you listen to your body. And then also, obviously, if there's any little niggles coming along, don't leave them too late. Make sure that you get on top of them. You do your rehab work. You go and see a physio if you feel that there's something not right. Those things prevent you from breaking the consistency in your training. And if you're able to train consistency, that's how you become better.
Yeah. Point taken to myself. I'm going to go and start looking for a physio, because I had some knee issues the last few weeks with my running. That's that's beside the point, perhaps, but yeah, I definitely agree. I agree with those things. One thing I wanted to piggyback on was when you talked about those swimming example sets for the week, and we also talked about the 1 hour more intense bike and run session that time crunched age groupers might do during a week. What can you give a couple of examples? So one bike session example that you would give, and a run session example that you would give as that 1 hour weekly workout.
So for an age group, there's obviously various runs you can do, but a yield run session is always very good for them because it focuses on their technique. They've got to learn how to run the yield really well with good technique to get to the top. Leaning forward, engaging the glutes, that kind of thing, and it makes them strong quickly. So I always like to do a yield session for my age group athletes. Whether it's 4 times 5 minutes yield session and then jogging back down the hill.
So that's roughly 4 repeats on Table Mountain.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So a yield session is always a good session to do. And then for cycling, yield sessions again, another yield session is good, but obviously sometimes it's difficult to get to find a hill. And then a lot of age groupers, because they push for times to, they like to use a trainer. And obviously a lot of them like to use power as well, which is very useful for their kind of racing, because if you understand power and understand where you need to be in a race and you stick to the power, then you're able to run well off the bike, which is important. So for them, it's recommended to them to do a FPT test and then understand where their power ranges are, and then obviously to work in those power ranges. So whether it be 5 times 10 minutes or 4 times 15 minutes, within that power range, those are very good sessions for them.
One more question before we roll into the rapid fire questions, and that's in addition to the mental skills that we already talked about, you also take a great interest in nutrition. So is there something that you see that many athletes do wrong with nutrition, and that a simple fix or improvement that could help listeners of this show?
And nutrition is all about planning. Planning your meals. It's very important. But one thing and age groupers do like it is they subscribe to quite a lot of supplements, which I don't always agree with. I think if you have a healthy, balanced diet, you don't need to take a lot of supplements. So yeah, I subscribe to the healthy eating, planning your meals, making sure you don't eliminate any serious food groups from your diet, but then also to have a balanced approach. Not to think too seriously about it, not to overthink it, and to kill yourself if you had a chocolate or whatever, because it's difficult, and to make sure that you're eating enough, because often you can get a bit what's the word, a bit too serious about the diet, and just to have a balanced approach about it, because if you're training hard and you're eating well, then it'll be good for you. And then obviously one critical thing with diet is to make sure that if you've had a hard session, to refuel within 30 minutes, so that you can make sure that you get the refuel for the following session. So that's always a critical aspect of nutrition, is to make sure that you refuel within 30 minutes after a serious session.
Yeah, that would be my answer to the question. The refueling, that's something that I think that most people unfortunately don't do, or they don't do well enough, and then it hurts them later on in the day when they are starving. So let's move into some rapid fire questions. So these are just very short and sweet questions, and take 10-15 seconds or so to answer these, no more. Starting with, what's your favorite book, blog, or resource related to triathlon?
I mean, obviously I read a lot of triathlon related stories, but I mean, you got the, Training Peaks. There's a lot of useful stuff on there, especially for age groupers. There's so much reading material there that I love to read. Obviously I like to follow the Slow Twitch blog, which gives me insight into various athletes and how they live and how they see things. And then I've also listened to Joel Filio's podcasts, which have been very interesting. And then obviously Brett Sutton has some interesting things that you can take from him, and he has he's really also focused on age groupers, so there's a lot to learn from him. So yeah, those are the four blogs and podcasts that I like to listen to.
Brilliant. What's a personal habit that's helped you achieve success?
I'd go back to that goal setting where I spoke about early. Having a goal, writing it down, being accountable for it is something that I feel that has helped me achieve what I've achieved. So yeah, every time this time of year, I write my goals down, and then to work towards them. And it's really important to write them down, because if you don't write them down, then you're not accountable for them, and you kind of forget what your goals were. So that's something that
42%, I think, is the improvement, the increase in likelihood that you will achieve a goal just by the mere act of writing it down. That's a Harvard study or something similar that I read. I don't remember the exact figure, but it's something around 40%, I believe. Finally, yes. What do you wish you had known or wish you had done differently at some point in your triathlon journey?
When you become a coach, you realize, there's a whole lot of things. I feel that, when I was a athlete, like I said, I always thought the more I trained, the better I was going to be. And especially in my earlier days. But when I realized, that training smart is something that you can do, and you don't need to train as much to get good results. You just need to train smart, and maximize the training that you're doing. So that was a really important thing that I'd sometimes learned. Sometimes I felt I did a whole lot of garbage miles that took a lot of time but didn't really benefit my racing. So, you need to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are and adapt them to your needs.
Brilliant. And where can we find out more about you and follow you? So where can we find out more about you and follow you on social media and on the internet?
Yeah, I don't currently I haven't really got a website at the moment. I'm working on getting my website up and running, but that will be up and running in the new year. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Katie Pure. I've got an Instagram account. I think it's Katie Pure 1. And then I've also got a Facebook account, which is just under Kate Roberts.
Yeah. We'll link to those in the show notes on thattriathlonshow.com. So anybody who wants to can go and check them out. All right. Thank you, Kate. This has been really, really great talking to you and hearing your insights. It was a pleasure having you on, and I wish you all the best for 2018.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
So I hope that you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed talking with Kate. You can find the show notes for this episode as usual on thattriathlonshow.com. And if you want to comment on this episode and you have some things that you want to clarify, or you have your own ideas or thoughts on some of the topics that we discussed, then post your comments on that show notes page that you'll find linked to from thattriathlonshow.com, and I'll be there to take an active part in the conversation on the comments. So a few key takeaways that I got from this interview were: first, be aware that training's not always going to be pretty, as Kate said. Getting through it consistently, even when you don't have that same drive and motivation every morning, is huge for long-term success. And having that goal in the back of your head is going to be a key factor in making sure that you get up and get training when it feels a bit rougher than usual. Second, it's not all about the time that you put into training, but it's about how smart you train as well, or maybe more importantly. And that's one of the reasons why some age group triathletes can have massive success on very limited training time compared to others. Because just getting junk mileage done isn't going to cut it if you want big triathlon improvements. That's just a fact. And related to that previous point, put in the focus and the presence in every session. And that, in my opinion, is a massive part of smart training that I mentioned in the second point. Being present, being focused. And that's one of my foundational coaching philosophies and something that I talk a lot with my athletes about. So you could somewhat simplistically say that what you get out of a training session, how much you improve, is directly proportional to the focus that you bring into that session. So, for example, let's say you have a racing nemesis that you want to beat, but he or she trains 40% more hours than you do. But if you bring 50% more focus and presence into your training sessions than he or she does, then you are actually doing very, very well, because you are most likely getting a lot more out of it. I'm not saying that it's directly a like 1-to-1 ratio. That's not the point. That's why I caveated it by saying that it's a simplistical explanation, but still the point stands that you can get so much more out of the training session if you're actually focused and present at all times throughout the session, not just the first 5 minutes and then you tune out. Be focused, be present, and gain those improvement. And also, as Kate said, this is a nice bonus. It's a nice way to distract yourself a bit from the pain that you will feel in a hard training session by just focusing on the execution in every single moment. So, those are my key takeaways, and I want to hear yours. So go to thattriathlonshow.com and post them in the comments for this episode. The next episode will be released on Monday, and that's an interview with Steve Palladino, who is perhaps the forerunner of all forerunners when it comes to running with power. And a very large part of my knowledge about running with power comes from following his work very, very closely. So I'm thrilled to have him on. And we will dive deeper into running with power than I or any other podcast episode ever has done. And really get down into some specifics on how to use it and how to benefit from it. So I highly recommend that if you haven't already, listen to episode 59 with Chris Haig on Running with Power. That's where you'll also get the basics, but we also dive into some more advanced concepts on that episode. But what we start with from the ground level so that you can learn the concepts about training with power. So listen to that, and then you'll be better prepared to listen to the interview with Steve on Monday. And finally, I'll also want to remind you to go and take the That Triathlon Show 2018 survey that is linked to down below in the show notes, in the episode description in your podcast app, or you can go directly to scientifictriathlon.com/survey. Now I'm very happy to finally get to stop talking, because as I mentioned in the interview with Kate, yesterday was New Year's Eve and my voice is really, really not at its peak form today. I'll go and have a nice little run, see if my knee holds up. I first want to thank, obviously, our sponsors. First, Ventum. Thank you, Ventum, for supporting That Triathlon Show. You can find them on ventumracing.com. And friend of the show, Cody Bills, who is perhaps the smartest professional triathlete out there, rides Ventum, and I believe that if he thinks they're the fastest, they probably are, because that dude is so smart. You can listen to my interview with Cody from back in the day when I still did a couple of pro athlete interviews in episode 11. And thank you also to Precision Hydration for sponsoring this episode. Go and take the free online sweat test on precisionhydration.com to get your personalized hydration strategy for your next race. And if you buy any electrolyte products, use the discount code ThatTriathlonShow, all one word, for 15% off. Thank you, as always, for listening. Keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.